We're in, so welcome back to the Zero Life podcast. Who am I with?
Jaden.
And our very esteemed guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Tobi. I'm Tobi.
Cool. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
I'm a producer working across mainly film and a little bit of TV. Doing anything. I just do anything that I think is interesting. So could be a documentary, could be a comedy drama, could be a short film, could be a conceptual art film. I make things that I think are cool.
Sound like a very typical, I suppose, multi-hyphenate. Would you say that the title producer is a bit restrictive, or it could be a bit restrictive for like the breadth of things that you do?
I think it's restrictive in the sense that no one really knows what it means. Like everyone's always like, what is a producer?
I was literally going to ask.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
No one knows what it means. But I think my role is pretty much the same regardless of like the type of project that I'm working on. Which ultimately, for my style of producing anyway, because I think it's different for different people, but I will usually work with an artist from the very genesis of their project and sort of like see it through to whatever we want the end result to be. So yeah, a lot of like creative development, a lot of like logistically, okay, cool, how are we going to do this? How are we going to pay for it? And how are we going to deliver it?
And so you mentioned you got your own style. I know it might be quite difficult to describe that style.
I think I just like to work very collaboratively.
Okay.
But I think it also depends on the artist, because there are some artists or some writers or directors that don't necessarily want their producer like really involved in the creative, which is also like fine, but it's just not necessarily the kind of things that I would work on. I think I just like to be very hands-on in sort of like the shaping of whatever the project is that I'm going to be involved in. Equally, because it helps me like do my job better when it comes to the logistics. So someone was going to like slap a script in front of me and say, I want fire and I want, like cars falling into like rivers and da-da-da-da. I can sort of come in and say, okay, something that we can't do, but like how can we still achieve like what it is that you want to achieve, but in a, I guess, more efficient way that's still gonna be true to the creative. And I think because I've sort of come from the theatrical world where that is kind of just the way that people are working, like the theatre that I was working in, we didn't really work with plays, like we didn't do scripts. It was more sort of like a bunch of artists in a room coming up with ideas and kind of just like playing and testing them out. So I think I'm still beholden to that in a sense, but in I guess a bit more of a formal way of I do have a script, or at least something that I have to sort of like read and go through.
Sure.
What's your sort of journey been like then to being like a producer? Because I think in a lot of professions, there's quite a clear like pathway to, wherever you want to get your end goal in your career. But for becoming a producer, it might be very different for loads of different people in their inroads to that. So what was it like for you?
It was just vibes, to be honest. Like there was no kind of like straight plan. So when I was working in theatre, I got into that via an apprenticeship. And that was me just sort of being like, I don't really know what it is that I want to do yet. I know that I love the arts and I know that I love working with people. And I kind of wanted a year to like figure that out. So the plan was that I would do some kind of apprenticeship or something and then probably go to university once I've figured out my shit. And then just, I guess, got really lucky ending up at the theatre that I was at, which was just a really like playful place to be. And I could sort of come in with lots of different ideas and they'll be like, yeah, you should do it. Which at the time I was 18 and you weren't really being given that much responsibility to like actually go and action your ideas with support. And so, yeah, I think, and that was also like just my first introduction to producing generally. And then I was like, this is cool, I'll just keep doing this. And then I just got to a point where people just sort of kept asking me to do things and I'll just be like, yeah, sure, cool. So like just working with like lots of different types of artists, and then a lot of like those kind of artists, like poets or musicians or whatever, would then want to make films, and then I'll be like, yeah, cool, whatever. And then I feel like my career up until this point has mainly been me just saying yes to doing stuff and then figuring out whether I enjoy it or not. During lockdown, I did 2 music videos and I was like, no.
Really?
Never again. Yeah, it's enough for me. But like, I'll always like try something and then figure out if it's for me personally.
What was the theatre, if you don't mind me asking?
It's a Batsy Art Centre.
Oh, cool. All right. Intrigued.
And so how do you feel about where you are now, looking back on how you actually became a producer and like your pathway? Do you think, it was typical, atypical, you're happy with it? What would you change?
I'm really happy with it. I think, I don't know, like when you're working in the creative industries and you feel like you're doing something that is like slightly outside of the norm, it's very easy to question if that was the right thing to do. Like there were still times where I'm like, maybe I should go to university, after making the decision to not do that 10 years ago, So hopefully we'll get to a point where I'm like fully comfortable with the decisions that I've made. But I think I'm making the stuff that I want to make, and I've done some really amazing projects, and I've done lots of things that I also thought I would never do as well. So it's like, I'm a fan of the sort of like chaos of my journey so far. I think I've only just started to be maybe a little bit more strategic and sort of thinking like, okay, cool, like what do I actually want to do in the future, and trying to like plan to get there. But up until this point, it has just been vibes.
I kind of phrase that kind of sentiment as you throwing a bunch of different things at the wall and seeing what sticks. And maybe it's only a bit more recently that you're figuring out what sticks.
Yeah.
So in that, if you could go back to, your 18-year-old self, is there anything that you tell yourself then, given the infinite wisdom that you've acquired in the past decade? Just thinking if there's someone who is thinking, I wouldn't mind being a producer or doing that, throwing things at the wall, seeing what sticks. Is there any advice that you can give about how to go about that?
I think at the time, I probably did. I probably made a lot of right decisions that I probably didn't have conviction in myself. It's only like in retrospect, like when I think back to it, I sort of like, I took advantage of like everything that you could do between the ages of 18 and 25. I did all the programs. Like I took advantage of like the cheapest tickets for things, like even if it's stuff that I didn't have a formal, like I did like a festival producing program only because I loved festivals. It's not necessarily, it wasn't that deep to me to be like, do I want a career in this thing before I do this one workshop? It's just like, it's a workshop and it's free, I'm going to do it. So I just did everything. And I think that just really helped me figure out what I liked and didn't like. Not even necessarily about those specific industries, but even just like the way that people worked, and it's sort of like growing into my own producerial practice. It's like, cool, well, what kind of producer do I want to be? What things do I find interesting? What things am I going to take from this that I definitely want to keep? What do I want to throw away? And so like, I always just say to people, they should just do everything, like just do all the workshops and go and see all the shows and whatever. It doesn't matter whether you think it's going to align with your 10-year plan. Because to be honest, at the age of 18, I wasn't thinking about what I was going to be doing at 28. I was just thinking about literally like the next year of my life. It was quite short-sighted in that sense, which did mean that I could just like do things and see if it vibed or not. I wouldn't put so much pressure on it. But I don't think at the time that was my thinking. I think this is just like, in retrospect, I can kind of see that I don't really regret doing those things.
Yeah, that's good. Again, throwing a bunch of things at the wall. I don't know. Do you think it's feasible for people to do that nowadays when we're in an era of kind of hyper specialization, and there's a lot of pressure on people to get real jobs and all the rest of it, cost of living crisis? Do you think it's still feasible to do that, trying out different things?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's like, I doubt like all the things that I did at the time exist. I don't think the apprenticeship that I did exists. I think some of the workshops I did don't exist. Like there are definitely things that just don't exist anymore for 18-year-olds today. And I think there is a different type of pressure. I think there was still a pressure when I was that age to sort of like really figure out your shit and decide what you want to do, and this emphasis on like these years of your life are going to be so pivotal between the ages of 16 and 21. And I think that is the same for this generation in probably in a much more like aggressive way, I think, personally. But I still think that there is an element of play that people should hang on to. I think you probably have to work more to like really hang on to wanting to like experiment and just like try lots of different things out and see what works. I think we're also in an age where like a lot of people are seeing people that are their age, quote unquote, like blow up, right? Across social media, you're seeing someone that is the same age as you, allegedly living the dream and having a full career and making XYZ amount of money and having all these different experiences. And so I think a lot more people are like, oh, well, if I just like knuckle down and focus on this one thing, I would achieve that same thing. Whereas I don't necessarily, I can't really think at the time like what other 18-year-olds I was like idolizing in that sense.
Okay.
So there is that added pressure as well, which I guess feels like the antithesis to like just playing and experimenting, because it feels like you're not making a decision.
Yeah.
But I'm also just like, that's the best time to play an experiment, because I think the older you get, you just lose that, because then you just get sucked into the world of like work and council tax,
responsibilities,
and the price of bin bags, like all these things that you might not necessarily have to think about at that age. Obviously some people are, but before any of that shit happens, it's like, yeah, just like if there are some of these things that exist, which some of them still do, like I would still encourage people to do them and use what they think is useful from those to kind of help guide their decisions, as opposed to sort of like looking at other people, which is easier said than done, obviously.
I love that idea of keeping play in the kind of forefront of your mind when you're trying to figure it out, as it were. It's nice.
We've seen your work on the Black Ticket Project, which is a really cool initiative that gave a lot of young people free access to the theatre. Maybe you could talk to us a little bit about that and like other opportunities you've been given people in a similar vein.
Yeah. So Black Ticket Project, I started when I was 23, and it was just about like a lot of Black plays that were happening at the time and wanting people to see them. Like that was just it. And so I saw a play called Barbershop Chronicles, and I was like, it's amazing. Like, it's a play set in barbershops across lots of Black, predominantly Black countries across the diaspora. And I just wanted people to see it. So I like bought a bunch of tickets and gave them to some people. And then that was kind of it. And then another show came called Nine Night, and which is about the rituals of Nine Night when someone passes away in Caribbean culture. And I was like, I want people to see it. So I kind of did the same thing. And then like people sort of like, if this was a consistent thing, like they would donate more to it, and it just became like a need, basically like an identified need that other people identified. Someone like other people called, like named it Black Ticket Project and all of that kind of stuff. And so then it just snowballed into this thing where more theatres were sort of like, we've got all of these tickets, not even just theatres, like it kind of spanned across visual arts and film and lots of different sectors. They were just like, we've got a bunch of tickets, we'd love to give them to you to sort of like distribute to audiences that maybe wouldn't come to the show otherwise. Not necessarily just because of the price of the tickets, but because if they had a choice to spend that £20 on something that they know they're going to enjoy, or something that they've never engaged with before, like they've never been to this building, they're going to pick the thing that they know they're going to get something from. So yeah, it just kind of, it was a lot, it just grew a lot bigger than I imagined, I think, especially at the time. But yeah, I think through that, then started to think about, okay, what other things can I do or use it to sort of like support other people with? So if there were like any workshops that people wanted to do that cost money, we would pay for those workshops. Or if someone wanted to like shadow on a project, we would like pay them something for their time, so they're not having to choose between going to work on a weekend or doing a project, you know? So just like little things like that I think make a difference to the way that people might engage with the things that they want to do, and sort of weighing it up against their responsibilities and things like having to like make money and support the people in their lives and all of this kind of stuff. But yeah, it's still like going in the background, so I still do it. And I guess like the ethos is kind of the same across like a lot of the projects that I do. I kind of look at, are there any opportunities here to sort of create entry positions or shadowing opportunities, or just anything that I think is gonna be useful to someone who might find it useful.
So just on that last bit, could you talk to us a bit more about some of the ways you might be providing people with access to opportunities that they might not have had previously?
In every project that I've done, I've tried to like build in like lines in my budget for like other people to be involved at different stages. Like some, depending on the project and like also who the project is with /for and all of these kind of stuff. Some of them will be much more kind of like shadowing positions, but still make sure that that person is paid for the time that they're spending there.
Right.
Some of them will be like jobs where they can actually get a credit as part of that, depending on like the team. So an assistant credit or a runner credit or a third AD credit or whatever. So at least it's something that they can like slap on their CVs and hopefully like get them other jobs. So yeah, it very much depends on how much control basically I have in the project and like the scale of it in terms of what I do. But it's always something like, it's one of the first questions I ask when I get involved in something is like, can I bring other people into this that are maybe haven't worked on something like this before, or just seem to have a vested interest in this kind of work, or at least like the space, and just knowing that it would be useful for them to be involved in some capacity.
So I'm interested in that bit a little bit more. So where does it come from? Why is it important for you to provide these opportunities to, I'm guessing, young people, but people who may not necessarily fit the criteria initially, or people who don't necessarily get access to those opportunities? Where does that importance come from?
I think like coming into the industry in the way that I did isn't very common. And what I'm sort of hearing about more when you sort of like hear about people's journeys, especially like people that are in my kind of job, you kind of hear the sort of journey of them sort of like working their way up. So like I started as a runner, and then I did this, 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 and now I'm here. And it's like, I didn't do that. Like I didn't do all of these steps. And that's not a very common thing. So if that way of working still exists in the industry, and the thing that is going to get someone into the industry is them having this credit on their CV that's going to lead to more things, then I will just give them that thing, because at least it's a stepping stone into them doing what they actually want to do, hopefully on a project that they actually want to work on. Because you also hear lots of like really horrible stories of people being like, I was running on this and I was treated like shit and this person treated me like crap, but I just had to put up with it. And it's just like, I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
Because why?
Yeah.
Like, why should that sort of be like the rite of passage to just doing the job that you want to do? So yeah, I think there's one that's just about like getting the credit, which is for me such a frivolous thing, but it's so important to the industry. Credits are just very important. It's like, well, you don't have a credit as this specific thing, even if you have all the skills. It's like, well, you don't have this specific credit, so can you actually do the job?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, no one's really looking at the transferable skills, which is annoying. So I'm just like, cool, if this credit is going to help with your career, then take the credit and, you know, do the work on this and then move into something else. So yeah, hopefully it's like a stepping stone for people to just like do what they actually want to do without the faff of also people being like, you need to do lots of work for free first to then do the blah-de-blah-de-blah, like go volunteer your time on this thing. And it's like, well, that project can probably pay someone £50 or like whatever. Like you can pay someone anything, like something to do the work. Yeah. But again, I didn't know. I just started hearing a lot of conversations about people talking about basically having to be exploited to step into the industry and do the jobs that they wanted to do. And I was just like, I think that's bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah, agrees.
Yeah, I think that point around giving young people like incentive and giving them credit where it's due when they're working on these projects is super important. Do you feel like there's any challenges with like working with young people in that capacity and getting them interested, providing them incentive and making sure they're like remunerated properly on these projects?
Like challenges on like with young people, challenges with companies.
Challenges with young people I'm talking about.
I think some people think it's more exciting than it actually is. Like, I don't, and that's not to like, I'm obviously very excited by the work that I do.
Yeah, it sounds quite glamorous, can't it? Like,
but you know, it feels like, oh, like you're on set and all this stuff is happening, and it's like sometimes there's nothing to do. Like you're just there. Like it's not
making teas and coffees.
Yeah, like it's not really. Even like me as a producer, like sometimes on set, I'm just there. Like I'm not doing that much. But yeah, I think it's just about trying to be realistic with like, this is what the job is.
Yeah.
These are the things that you're probably going to be experiencing or sitting in on or like this is all the in-between bits from A to B. Like, and some of it is really dry and boring and some of it is really fun. And also just sort of for me to understand a bit more about exactly what they want to get out of it. Because again, I think some people are just like, I just want to be involved in this thing. Like, I just want to be on set and I just want to do this. And it's like, but what specifically, like, do you want to get out of it?
Yeah.
So I at least know where to place you in those in-between bits, because there's a lot of work to do before we even get to that. But yeah, I would say the main thing is just like trying to manage expectations and just be like, some of this is really boring, but it has to be done to get to what you might think is the exciting stuff.
It's funny, everything looks more glamorous on Instagram, and then
literally,
you get there,
and it's just
when
like,
you see the final product.
Flashy
video.
Yeah.
That's what we're saying. Yeah. That's what we're saying before. Do you think the kind of opportunities and initiatives that we've been talking about, do you feel like there's a cutoff point for access to those? Do you feel like there's a point where it's like, you should have this pretty much figured out now? This isn't for you?
From like the wider industry, yeah. Obviously, like you have lots of initiatives and stuff that end when you're 25. My 25th year, oh my God, I was like, what else is left? I'm just going to apply for everything before I'm cut off from all these things.
Yeah.
But I think, I think from like an industry, also, I think the industry also loves like a young prodigy. Like they love being the ones to be like, we discovered this person.
Yeah.
We gave them this thing when they were just 12 years old. And now look at them. Like they love those stories. And so once you get to a certain age, it's not cool. It's not sexy anymore. Saying that you've achieved something at 30, people are like, yeah, so you should, you're an adult.
Right.
Like people don't care about like you getting certain accolades or doing certain things. Whereas like when you hear that people have done certain things and there's an age attached to it, people are like, whoa, you did this at this age? Like it's a thing. Personally, like, I don't, because I think people should just be allowed to change their interests at any point. But again, then you get into the thing of like, well, then how do you get into that? Like if I was coming into this industry at this point, people would be telling me that I need to start off as a runner. And it's like, but I've got rent.
Yeah.
And real. Council tax and bin bags. Like I can't start off there because I need like work, like actual work that is going to match the responsibilities I now have as an adult. And those are the things that are stopping people from moving industries or moving into certain roles, because again, people aren't looking at the transferable skills that people have. They're looking at the credits and saying, well, you haven't done this specific role, you haven't been credited for this specific role, so I don't know if you could do it, so you got to start again. And then people are just like, well, bun that, I'm just not going to do it then. Yeah,
it's interesting. It sounds like you're saying that there should be multiple points of entry for different industries, depending on what you can actually do, rather than what you've been credited for.
Yeah, exactly. Like if someone has produced an international tour with 60 actors and all of this stuff, like I'm sure they can produce a short film. Like, you know, I'm sure they can produce like a mini series, and you just surround them with the teams. And it's also like role specific as well. Because I think if I was a writer or director and I had never made a film before, but I had a really great script, what companies would then do is surround me with people that have done it loads. So I'm given the team to then deliver my thing. It doesn't matter that I haven't done it before. Whereas as a producer, if I don't have a specific credit as like a producer on like, let's say, a mini series that might be like 6 30-minute episodes, they aren't thinking, well, let me just surround her with a team that is going to allow her to deliver it, because she probably could, she just needs support. They're just like, you don't have those credits.
Right. It's just off that, it's something that we've noticed quite a lot looking at your work. You are really on it when it comes to bigging people up. So whether it be in Instagram captions or in speeches or even in this podcast today, you're very good at giving gratitude to those people around you who have helped. And I suppose you've kind of answered this in the last bit, but how do you feel in general about in the creative industries, people giving credit where due? Or do you think there's a lot of, this was me, I'm gatekeeping?
I'm the biggest hater of speeches that are like, nobody believed in me and I did it. I did it all on my own. And Lala, oh my God, shut up. Like there was someone somewhere that helped your ass, and now you're just like making it seem like there was no one around you. And I just think that's bullshit. Yeah. I'm the biggest hater of those kind of speeches. I'm sorry, I am, because I'm just like, it's not about not identifying like the struggles that you've had and the things that you know, we're definitely working in industries, especially in the creative industries, where people like do doubt your abilities, and then they see you do it, and then they're like, oh, now come and do this thing for us. Like that definitely happens. But I think this idea that everything someone achieves is by themselves or of their own accord doesn't make sense to me. And I just think you don't lose anything by mentioning the people that helped in whatever capacity. That whenever I've produced a really difficult project, I know that it was done because I had a team of people that were in the trenches with me. And so it's like, like we did that because we were in the trenches and we still made this project work. It's important to acknowledge that. And I think acknowledgement goes a long way, especially if you're in a job role that is generally quite thankless. it's like, well, just one person being like, you're doing a great job makes a difference. Like, it can really make your day if you're just like being hit with like problem after issue after, like, do you know what I mean? Like, just one person being like, you're dealing with this really well is like, just gives you that spur to just like keep going. I just don't see the benefit in not bigging people up for the work that they've done. I just don't get why people would opt to seem like they had to do everything on their own and there wasn't a singular person that gave them a piece of advice or sent them an Uber Eats voucher when they were in the trenches, or like just something, you know? It just seems like the right thing to do.
Yeah. Also, one of the most iconic thank you speeches of all time, Whitney Houston, where she just reels off.
It's just like,
I think about Whitney Henry.
Yeah. Exactly.
Off the back of giving people credit, I think another important way of, you know, giving people their due is making sure that they're paid. So what kind of processes do you follow to make sure you and the people that you bring in get paid on time and fairly?
So if I'm working on something that's low budget, I try to have some parity across my budget. So I would have like HODs would all be getting a certain fee, assistants would all be getting a certain fee, and everyone is essentially like paid the same across their sort of like band. So if someone comes back and they're like, could you do it for this? I'm just sort of like, I can't, I'm sorry, like everyone. I'm also quite transparent with my budget. So especially if it is low budget, because you are asking people to do a job for £1.50. So it is sort of like, so you gotta like give them a reason for that.
Yeah.
So I am pretty transparent, and I'm just like, everyone is getting paid this, you know, or everyone in post is getting paid this. And it's like, if people obviously still say no to it, I'm not going to take offense to that, because I know that it's not enough for the work that they're doing. But it's just what I have in my budget. So that's what I do across all my projects, just so I just have to justify what I'm offering to people, especially if I know that it's not enough for the work that they're going to be doing. And I just can't have people working for free. Even if I'm paying them like a pittance, like I'd rather do that than ask people to do something for free. Ethically, I just can't do it. Paying myself is interesting because people always sort of kind of expect the producer to not pay themselves and to like invest or defer their fees back into the project for the sake of the project. And it's like, it's not sustainable,
right?
You know, which is why a lot of people are like, it's a rich person's game. But I just think generally that comes with like people not respecting that producing is like a job, and it's not just about you making your project and me like helping you to make your project. Like if I'm doing something, it's also because I see some benefit in it for me to be a part of this as well. And it's a lot of work. Right. I think a part of the industry that does this really badly is promos, like music promos, where they've got the kind of like director gets 10%, producer gets 5%. I was like, why would the producer get 5% of the whole budget when they are doing a lot of work?
Yeah.
Like,
for
sure.
If it's just put them on parity with the director. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're going to get a music video where the budget is, I don't know, 15K or 10K. So what are you paying your producer to work on that music video? £500. Let's be for real.
Yeah.
I hate that rule, and I say no to it because I'm just like, if you're gonna ask me to do this, and also like you might be involved in the bidding process of that music video, so like pulling together the budget before it's even signed off, so the job might not even happen, and you're doing all of that work for free to then do this 5%, 10%. No.
Is that like I wasn't aware of it. Is that like a rule of thumb? They're 10%, 5%.
Yeah, it's just a thing, and I don't understand why it's a thing.
Yeah.
Because as
crazy.
a producer, you're doing so much work
Yeah.
that is on par, if not more, than the director.
Yeah.
You should be getting paid the same as them. That's what I think.
Sure.
Let's make new rules. Make new rules.
It seems like from what you've been saying, like collaboration is a really big part of your process. Do you have any kind of like criteria for the people that you work with or your team when you're like going for projects?
Just have to be nice people. Like, I don't want to work with an arsehole, obviously. I think also I like people that have initiative and are efficient and are problem solvers. I hate working with people that just complain.
Yeah.
Especially, again, if it's like a low budget thing where everyone is sort of like chipping in and doing things outside of their specific role to make the project work. I'm like, come to me and complain about things 100%. Like, we should be able to come to each other and like complain about certain things and just be like, oh my God, like this is happening. But you also need to come to me with solutions. Yeah, I just can't work with people that are just like, well, that's not going to work. It's like, okay, then tell me what is going to work.
Yeah.
If I've said that we can't do this specific thing, like let's work together to try and figure this out. And some people think that's like beyond their job. I can't work with those people. Also, like, I like working with people that are excited by what we're doing. Like, I don't really vibe with like nonchalance and people just being a bit too cool for school and sort of like, yeah, whatever. It's just a little like project. Like, be excited by it. Like, that's the thing that's gonna like get everyone involved excited by it. Like, your enthusiasm about what you're making. Whereas if you're just a bit like, yeah, whatever, just another day for me.
Yeah.
I think it's just a bit of a shit attitude to have.
Yeah.
Other than that, I'm quite open. I don't work with teams of all white men. I don't do that. Just all men in general. Like, you gotta have some women in there, or just anyone else. That's kind of it, I think. Yeah.
With your focus on, sounds like community, putting people on, making sure people have got access to opportunities. Obviously, not everyone can have a slice of the pie. Have you ever had people frustrated with you for not putting them on, for not helping them blow up or anything like that?
I've had some like weird responses to so I get sent a lot of scripts all the time.
Yeah.
And I will always read them. Sometimes it obviously takes me a while, but I will read them and then like get back to people. So if they ask for feedback, I'll give feedback. If they just want to know if I want to work on it, I'll come back and say yes, or I say it's not for me. So I've had some weird responses to people being to me being like, it's not for me.
Right.
And people just sort of being like, well, it's your loss. And I'm like, yeah, maybe. Maybe
Let's
it
hope
is.
so.
But it's not that I don't want you to make it. It's
Yeah.
just not for me to make.
Yeah.
It's usually that. It's usually like me not wanting to, oh, actually, I had an interaction with one person. I was looking for a gaffer for this like comedy drama series. And so I put something out that was sort of like, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I'm working on. Someone that has experience in this. And someone sent me their CV and it was like really out of date and only had like music videos on it. So I was just sort of like, I don't think this is going to work. Like, I'm looking for someone with a bit more experience. And he came back with this email that was sort of like, I've worked on projects that are much bigger than your project. Mm-hmm. And, you know, like I'm out of your league for this anyway. Like, and if you wanted certain information, you should have asked. And I was like, did you not read my email? Like, I specifically said, this is what I'm working on and this is what I'm looking for. Why am I now asking you to give me more information? Come to me with that information.
Yeah.
So I came back to him and was just sort of like, cool, this isn't going to work. Like,
Hi, I'm Jale. I do the audio for this podcast. And like an idiot, I left my phone on loud, thinking that I could sneak in, join a call and let someone in. I couldn't do that and that messed up the whole pod. But please, I hope that it didn't disturb your viewing pleasure and please keep enjoying Zed or Alive.
I was just like, yeah, best of luck in the future with your endeavors and whatnot. Just a dick. And came back with something else and was like, oh, also I've looked into your team. I looked into your DOP and your director, and I don't really like their work. I think their shots are really like blown out, and just like started like going in and all of this. And I was just like, do you think I'm going to turn around and be like, oh, actually come work for me? Like,
Yeah.
What's the point? It was just an ego thing. It was just
Yeah.
an ego thing. And it's just like, I don't understand the point of that. Cause like, where do you think that's gonna go like from here? So yeah, I've had a lot of like weird and probably some like just like straight up like sexist like responses. Cause if I was a man, he wouldn't be talking to me crazy, probably. So yeah.
Yeah, it's that's actually, maybe there's a lot of entitlement going on, or there can be a lot of entitlement going on. It's very closely aligned to what we were saying before we started recording about dating sometimes. It's like, if you like on a dating app, if you turn someone down and it's like, oh, well, you're butters anyway, like I don't even want to date you or anything like that.
It's like that kind of reaction is only going to just shut the door, right?
Exactly.
So like, even if there was a chance for you in the future for them to think of you, it's definitely not coming now. So
literally.
What are you trying to get out of this interaction?
Exactly. I think it's clear from our conversation and the research that we've done that you've been quite kind of selfless and you have a lot of care when it comes to your position. And that might come across to some people as you kind of taking an aversion to being in like the limelight. Do you think like with all your success that you found over the last decade, that's changed? Are you more comfortable talking about yourself and more confident in your position, or are you still kind of, you know, in the shadows, I guess you could say?
I'm probably still like in the shadows, but also that's the nature of my job. Like no one really expects to hear from the producer unless the producer's like a big producer that people like care to hear from and has done like all these like incredible blockbuster films and all of this kind of stuff. So it is weird whenever I have to like talk about myself or talk about my work. I'd rather just do it.
Yeah. It's like it's not about what you can say. It's like, what can you do? Show me.
Yeah. It's just I'm just a bit like, what is there to say? I spend a lot of time doing admin.
I mean, yeah. Have you ever had to fight with imposter syndrome or anything like that? Have you ever found yourself in a position where you're not quite sure how I got here? Because to your point, you've had quite a unique journey into producing.
Yeah, definitely. I think like part of it is like me being like, can I do this job? This is a big step up for me. Am I ready for it? Those kind of like questions. And then part of it is like other people being like, you're not ready for it.
Oh, really?
In a way where I might be like, but I think I can do it. You know, kind of like what I was saying before is like, if you surround me with the right team, I can probably do that thing. But there's an unwillingness there because I haven't already done it. It's just like at some point I'm going to do my first thing. Like it's going to happen. So it's kind of like, it's twofold, I think. Yeah, some of it is me just being like, oh, okay, cool. Having to like just take a step back and just sort of like look at the facts. It's what my therapist would say. Like, look at the facts of the situation. Like, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? What skills do you have? What have you done before that really proves that you can do that?
Yeah.
And then sort of go into it from that perspective. And then the pushback will always come from you trying to like go to like the next stage in your career, where it is like you are stepping into unknown territory and it's totally reliant on someone taking a risk, right? And just sort of being like, yeah, you probably could, like, let's see how it goes. And that's quite difficult.
With that aspect of taking a risk, in inverted commas, do you think people in your position who might be given these opportunities, from you it sounds like, and from your work, it's coming from a place of care and wanting to put people on, or at least help people get access. Do you notice that there's somewhat of a savior complex or maybe a bit of narcissism coming from some people who will only put those people into positions just so then you can say, oh, I've put this person on, that person on?
Yeah, there is definitely some of that. Like, I think some people really want to like big bro people. Like, they want to sort of like be like, yeah, this is like my young G. Like, I'm the reason that they are who they are today. And like, they want to take the accolade for like making someone, which is like cool. Like, if you've contributed to someone's journey, that person will naturally talk about that anyway, you know, as people do. But there are also other things that have enabled that person to do what they're doing today. There are things that there are initiatives that they've taken themselves, or things that they've put their own time to, or, you know, there are things that they've just done outside of you doing the work that you've done to make that person. But yeah, a lot of people want to be seen as like the person that has like been the sole reason that this person is successful, or, you know, has been the main part of their journey, or without them, they wouldn't be doing XYZ, which to me always just needs to come from the actual person themselves.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's something someone could like wholeheartedly put themselves out there and be like, I'm the reason that da-da-da-da-da. Because if that person doesn't feel that way, your feelings are going to get hurt. Like,
yeah, literally.
You know, I just never think it should come from someone saying that they have done that thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's weird. And like I said, like, the industry as a whole loves a young prodigy as well. So you'll kind of have like a young person do something like really great at a really young age, and it will be like vultures. You'll just get like so many like companies and brands, and everyone like now wants to work with that person because they want to be involved in their journey. They want to be like named. Like, I remember like my friend who's a theatre director, he got a job at a theatre in quite a high position, and they had like all these other theatres being like, congrats to this person, they did this thing with us like 15 years ago. And because they're like, we have to make sure that people know that we're a part of their journey. So people think, oh, well, if I now join your company, then I will eventually be this director. You had to call some of them out and be like, some of you aren't relevant to me getting this job. Like, you need to stop adding your name to,
it wasn't you.
to my shit. Like, and I hear it because, again, like, that should come from him. Like, he should be the one to sort of say, this is what has led me here. And I also did all these other things which were great, but these are the things that I would say was most pivotal for this particular moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, everyone just wants like that accolade. They want to be like the big bro. Which I just think it's just an ego thing.
Yeah, I think the intention of being associated with those people is really important, and kind of in the inverse of what we were just talking about, mentorship can be like a really helpful and important thing for people who are trying to like develop your career. Do you have any experience of being mentored, or maybe you could talk to us a bit about what that was like?
I've had some mentors. I wouldn't say all of them were great, to be fair. I think the thing with mentoring is like, I think you're kind of told in the creative industries anyway, that's something that you need. Everyone's just like, find a mentor. And so sometimes you just want to like look for the person that is like doing what you want to do in the future, as opposed to looking at like, what kind of work do they make, or what kind of artists do they work with, or what does their practice look like, or, you know, whatever some of these other things might be. And so I've definitely been paired with people, and as we sort of gotten into it, I've been like, I don't get why I've been paired with this person. I guess like we might have similar jobs and they're doing it at a higher level, but their way of working is completely different to my way of working.
Gotcha.
And that doesn't mean I can't learn anything from that person, but they're probably better people that I could have been paired with. I've had loads of like unofficial mentors, obviously, and just people that have been willing to like give me their time and have made it a point to be like, I've got time for you, which is like really lovely. Even if it's not in an official capacity. So I love like that, because it's sort of like someone just letting you know, like when you're ready, like the door is open, and like ask me whatever you want or whatever. And it's reliant on me doing that work, but it's also me like having to really think about it and identify when I think it's useful to use this person's time. But I also think mentorship can be like a really beautiful thing, and I think it can be really helpful. I just think there needs to be more thinking around the point of it and why these two particular people should be in conversation, as opposed to just like finding anyone and be like, well, they're in a high position, so yeah, like be mentored by them or whatever. Because sometimes it's like, yeah, but they might not be the right person for you. And then it's really difficult to sort of think, okay, is this what mentoring is, just like full stop? Because if it is, then I don't want to do it again. You know, when it's probably not the case.
It's very specific to the person, and you can grab something off of some people, but not necessarily.
Yeah.
I feel like mentorship kind of gets glorified. You know, it's like you'll get that Mr. Miyagi who will just be there with you for the whole time. And you don't need anyone else, but more time you get a little bit of a bunch of different people.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And sometimes it comes back to that sort of like egotistical thing as well.
Right.
Of people being like, I want to be a mentor.
Right.
And it's like, why? Like, why do you actually
For
want
you
to?
or for the people you want
do you
to
know
help?
what I mean? It's like sometimes like people aren't going into it with their mentees' interests in mind anyway.
Yeah.
And I think that's also where you tend to get a shit mentor that just thinks they have gems that they need to drop onto the world.
So, this is a terrible segue, but have you ever been a mentor? There was no link there. I was going to ask that anyway, I promise.
I got gems for you.
I have officially 3 times.
Okay.
Is that true? I think, yeah. But I just have chats with people all the time. Like, obviously, people are like, I want to talk about the industry or producing or whatever. And I'll always like try and take a conversation with someone. But I mentor through specific companies. So the first one that I did was called The Big House, which is like a theatre company that works with care leavers. I'm mentoring at the moment for Arts Emergency. That specifically like is a company that pairs young people and mentors together across lots of different industries. And there's a very like structured way of doing it. And then through the London Screen Academy, which is like an alternative training for young people looking to get into film and television. So they're all like quite specific. And I think it's great because because they're really specific and there's like a process to it. Like you obviously have to go through like mentoring training and DBS checks and all of this kind of stuff. You can't just pop up and be like, I got gems. You know, you got to like really invest time into it. Like after every meeting I have with my mentee through Arts Emergency, I have to write a report of that session that we've had. Okay. And so sort of like, what did you talk about? What are the next steps? And all of this kind of stuff. So it's like time consuming. Like you have to really be dedicated to it. And then I had a shadowing opportunity for a film that I did and got like loads of responses for that and sort of like messaged everyone and was sort of like, I've selected this person, but if it was useful for us to have a conversation, then I'm up for doing that. So I've had loads of conversations with some of those people, which is like just an hour, but it's still like something. And they all have different things that they want to talk about. So yeah, like if there's like an official, I've never sort of been like, I want to be a mentor. I've always been asked to do it. Yeah. Sometimes I will say no as well if I don't feel like I can support them in the way that they might need to be supported, or I feel like I don't have the time, or I don't think I'm right for that specific person. But if I've been asked and it feels right, then I will probably do it.
Yeah. No, I like the fact that your mentorship is usually a bit more like structured and it's actually with the mentee's interests at hand rather than, I know, being like the uncle at the cookout, you know, who's every year has just got a bit of career.
Let me give you some advice.
Yeah. Let me tell you something. So, with the role you're in, you're championed by many. You're a BAFTA winner. We just get
let's go out for that.
BAFTA winner. So you got a lot of accolades, and you're continuing to do amazing things with all the work that you're doing. But we can imagine that this level of responsibility and status can come with some pressure, or a lot of pressure. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that? How's that been?
Yeah, I think when you like achieve certain things, or even if you've like worked with certain people or certain brands or whatever, I think people have a certain expectation for what you're going to do next, or like where your career is going to go next. It's like, oh, you've worked with such and such. Oh, you're then going to go on and do like big, amazing things. And it's like the creative industries aren't that linear, like, you know. So I think there's been a lot of external pressures of people being like, when are you making your feature? When are you making your feature? And I'm just like, I'm not ready to do that. You know, it's not something that I would love to do eventually. But right now I feel like I'm still learning. And so I want to stay in that space of learning. But yeah, it's obviously amazing. I just wish collectively, so for the individual as well as everyone around them, that people just like basked in the moment more. Just like was like, well done on doing this thing, and not go straight onto what you're going to do next.
Right.
I think that's where the pressure comes for a lot of people, because now it's like, oh, there's an expectation that I need to one up myself in a way, as opposed to just being like, that thing was great.
Yeah.
And just leaving it there.
I like that. It's a very fast-paced industry, so you don't always need to be looking at the next thing. But I'm intrigued about you talking about you doing a feature and not. It wasn't that you're not ready; it's that you're still learning. I feel like as creatives, it can be quite difficult to know when to take the next step or to take that leap. Do you have any advice on how to do that, or even when will you know that it's time to do that?
Yeah. To be fair, I can talk myself out of anything.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
So yeah, it's true. Like you might be ready for certain things and just like talk yourself out of it. I think for me, again, I just had to look at the facts and sort of say, well, if I am going to do a feature in the future, I want to have worked on one in a different position first. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm on a feature, but I'm not producing it.
Okay.
So there's less responsibility there. But it's sort of like, cool, I'm in the world. I can kind of see the way that it works, because it's going to be very different to what I've ever done before. There's a lot more people that you're accountable to. It's a lot more money that you're working with and all of this kind of stuff. And I want to at least see that before I dive into it. Which I think, again, is kind of role specific, because if I was a writer or a director, I could do like one short film that does really well and then go straight on to doing a feature. Because again, you're surrounded by the team. Whereas, yeah, for me, I'm just not in a rush to do those things, even when people sort of like, when are you doing it?
Yeah.
But also noticing that I'm getting to a point where it's like, if I wanted to do like another short film, I'm probably going to be quite limited in the ways that I can fund it, because I've just done a big short film. And it's like, well, I'm not going to give you this like tiny bit of money to then do another one, because rightfully that should go to someone else that maybe is doing their first or second short and is looking to scale up. So having to be a bit strategic and sort of be like, okay, cool, like what are the next steps before I kind of get to those bigger questions of like, when am I doing like the big projects? And I think because you see it happen a bit more for like writers and directors, I think people think the journey will be similar for a producer. And maybe for some producers it is, but like a lot of time you got to have so much under your belt before you like get put on certain jobs. So
yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Like you want to understand the whole scene before you get into it more.
Yeah, man, it's a lot like to do a feature, and even just being able to like have eyes on like a budget for like what would be considered a low budget feature film for a first-time director is really interesting because you're sort of like, oh, okay, like I've done short films where I've been working with like £2.50 and I've still made a film, and now you're working with millions. But then you're looking through the budget and you're like, actually, this is not a lot of money, because you see where that money goes, you know, and you're doing the same things that you would do on a short film where it's sort of like, it's low budget and we don't have that much money, and you know, all of those same conversations are still happening, but you're just accountable to way more people. And you are ultimately working with millions. And there's an incentive for this film to try and make some money, or to make some of that money back, or whatever, or do well at box office and with sales agents and all these things that I don't have to think about when I'm just doing a short film. So I don't see why any producer would want to throw themselves into that world without seeing it first. And also like being like, is that even for me?
Yeah.
Might not be.
Yeah. Just a bit of due diligence beforehand.
Cool. Do you see then any difference in kind of how people engage with your work depending on whether it's attached to like a big brand or someone they know, compared to something maybe that's, you know, something that you've had more of a hand in but is maybe not as, you know, well known?
Yeah, no one except me cares about like my little art films. I love my art films. If I could just make those, I probably would. My like conceptual, like sometimes no dialogue and lots of movement and all of this kind of stuff. Whereas like, yeah, you put something out with like a brand and obviously everyone's like, oh my God, because it's perceived marker of like where you're at in your career and who rates you, basically. Which is funny because sometimes, a lot of the times, I'll be more excited about the other thing. Like I'll be a lot more excited about this art film that I spent a year making because I think it's more interesting in its content, or I think the artist is really interesting, or something like that. And then I'll do like a branded thing that is like cool, but you know, not that deep. And people will be like, oh my God, you know. But it just comes with like the perception of these brands or these companies and what people think they represent. Even if like the process of working on it was like dog shit, they'll kind of like see the final outcome and be like, this is amazing. Yeah. I want to work with them. And sometimes I'm like, do you? I don't know if you do. Yeah.
There's again that whole everything looks better either on Instagram or once it's all finished, when you see the glossy outcome.
Yeah.
You know?
So 10 years into your career, do you ever think about your legacy? Like, what have you got planned, or what do you want to achieve now you're a little bit further in?
Don't know if I really thought that far ahead. I think I'm still thinking about like how to sort of like continue to work with the people that I want to work with, knowing that I'm approaching a position where I have to justify that more to companies or financiers or whatever. Like me being that person that's like, I know this person can do this job and they just need the chance, but I'm really having to like fight for that. And then hoping it doesn't backfire on me as the person that fought to have this person in this job. Sometimes it does backfire and it's like, cool, that's an L that I just have to take. Right. But I haven't necessarily thought about like legacy, because I don't know if I put that much self-importance on the kind of work that I make, because yeah, I might make like a film that is like really deep and emotional in its context, but then I might make a sketch show after that, you know? Yeah. And it's like, how do you compare the two? Like I couldn't necessarily say that my work is like always highly political, because it probably isn't. But yeah, I just want to enjoy everything that I do. But I think it's interesting that other people see I guess, like a spine throughout my work. So even if I've done lots of different things, they see some similarities between it all, which I find intriguing because I'm like, what is that? So I can put that on my website because I don't know what that is. Other than I think all these things are interesting.
I'm just trying to think if I've had a through line just from chatting to you today, if I can see a through line in your work. Community, importance of community, and the people that you work with. It's always a focus on the team as a whole.
That's really cool.
So, yeah. For what it's worth, you can put that on
Thanks.
your website. Have you got anything else that you're working on that you want to tell the people about, or anyone that you'd want to shout out? That's putting you on the spot after everything you said about shouting people.
What am I working on? Like I said, I'm working on a feature, which is cool. It's the first time I've been involved in a feature. I am also working on a sketch show, and they're very different.
Yeah.
And an art film.
Okay.
So, I'm just doing lots of different things at the moment.
And where can the people catch you?
In my house.
Where can people catch you online?
Oh, online. Oh.
I hope in your house, to be fair.
Outside. I was like, I don't leave my house.
You can't catch me. You can't.
NA.
Outside is expensive, man.
Outside is expensive.
I'm on Instagram. It's where most of my work is.
Cool.
I'm on Twitter, but I'm not serious on Twitter.
It'll all be in the description as well for listeners.
If you're gonna follow me on, I just chat a lot of shit on Twitter. Basically, don't expect like anything professional from me on there.
Else,
LinkedIn, which is the bane of my life, but I'm on there against my will.
I feel like no one's really there.
I just don't understand it. Like, I'll open LinkedIn and someone will be like, 3 years ago, I was jobless.
It's what you were saying.
And then what I did is I sold my shoe for this much money.
Yeah. We're all like being held at gunpoint to be on there.
I'm just like, it's always someone's got a story about how they made 100K from nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's cool. I'm not, that's great. But why does everyone have this story of like being in the gutter? Yeah. And then finding a pencil and then selling that pencil for something. And then that pencil gets featured and now Jay-Z has a pencil. Like, it's just weird. LinkedIn's weird, man. I don't know. Yes. I don't get it.
All right, so Instagram.
Okay,
cool. Absolutely lovely conversation. Thank you so much for coming.
It's been great.
Clap out.
Let's clap it up.
Clap it up.